advance notice of and to attend the meeting of the public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed and acted upon. In accordance with the provision of the Act, the Board Secretary has caused notice for this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted on the bulletin board located in the hallway outside of the administrative offices, and notice was provided to the Courier News, the Home News Tribune, and the Middlesex Borough Clerk. We will now have our flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Giordano.
Okay, I have the announcement of the election results. I, Annette Giordano, Business Administrator, Board Secretary, certify that the following were elected to the Middlesex Borough Board of Education at the annual school election held on November 7th, 2024, as identified in the exhibit, which may be viewed using the link. The election results will become part of the minutes. Members elected for a 3-year term: Mrs. Danielle Parenti, Mrs. Sharon Schuler, Mr. Thomas Thornton. Member elected for a 2-year term: Mrs. Patricia Reynolds. Member elected for a 1-year term: Mrs. Odette Jeffrey. And now I will administer the oath of office to our newly elected board members. You want to all come to the podium? Just raise your right hand and you can read it all together.
I, Patricia Reynolds, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state, under the authority of the people, so help me God. I, Patricia Reynolds, do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of Member of Board of Education, and that I am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 19-4-1, nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense listed in NJS 18A 12-1. And that I faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all of the duties of that office according to the best of my ability. So help me God.
Yes. Congratulations.
I'm just gonna stay here.
Thank you. What's on the top? Just on top. Now I'd like to open for nominations for the office of president. Roll call? Roll call. Oh, sorry. Mrs. Bayachek? Ms. Jeffrey? Present. Mr. Nicolay?
Present.
Mrs. Parenti? Present. Mrs. Perry? Present. Mrs. Quinn?
Present.
Mrs. Reynolds,
Here.
Mrs. Schuler,
Here.
Mr. Thornton.
Here.
Now I'd like to
Present.
open the floor for nominations for the office of president.
I would like to nominate Danielle Parente for president. Second. Does he need a second? I don't know.
Any other nominations? Okay, now I just need you to fill out your ballot for president. There's one for president and there's one for vice president. If you could fill out your president ballot and just pass them up.
I'll collect them.
Thank you.
I'll come back. You ready?
Okay, Mrs. Reynolds, a vote for Mrs. Parenti. Mr. Thornton, vote for Mrs. Parenti. Ms. Jeffrey, vote for Mrs. Parenti. Mrs. Perry, vote for Mrs. Parenti. Mrs. Schuler, vote for Mrs. Parenti. Mrs. Parenti, vote for Mrs. Parenti. Mr. Nicolay, vote for Mrs. Parenti. Mrs. Quinn, vote for Mrs. Parenti. Congratulations, Mrs. Parenti.
Yes. Okay, thank you. At this time, I would like to request nominations for office of vice president. I would like to nominate Mrs. Sharon Schuler.
No, second.
None others? Okay, same practice.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Good job.
Okay, Mrs. Reynolds voted for Mrs. Schuler. Mr. Thornton, vote for Mrs. Schuler. Mrs. Parenti, vote for Mrs. Schuler. Mrs. Schuler, vote for Mrs. Schuler. Mrs. Quinn, vote for Mrs. Schuler. Ms. Jeffrey, vote for Mrs. Schuler. Mr. Nicolay, vote for Mrs. Schuler. Mrs. Perry, vote for Mrs. Schuler. Sharon Schuler is our new vice president.
Thank you. The Board of Education adopts the New Jersey School Boards Association Code of Ethics for each board member. So what we'll do here is we'll go around and each person will read one of the letters. I'll start and we'll go this way. Sharon will be next. Go around. Everybody have it? I don't have a copy. If you don't have a copy, please Thornton, do you have a copy?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You have an extra copy?
Do you have one, Todd? Do you need one too?
Oh, you.
Okay, we're good. Be it resolved that the Middlesex Board of Education adopts the New Jersey School Boards Association Code of Ethics, and that each board member shall abide by these principles in accordance with board policy and NJSA 18A:12-24.1. I will uphold and enforce all laws, rules, and regulations of the State Board of Education and court orders pertaining to schools. Desired changes shall be brought about only through legal and ethical procedures.
I will make decisions in terms of the educational welfare of children and will seek to develop and maintain public schools that meet the individual needs of all children regardless of their ability, race, creed, sex, or social standing.
I will confide my board action to policymaking, planning, and appraisal, and I will help to frame policies and plans only after the board has consulted those who will be affected by them.
I will carry out my responsibility not to administer the schools, but together with my fellow board members to see that they are well run.
I will recognize that authority rests with the Board of Education and will make no personal promises or take any private action that may compromise the board.
I will refuse to surrender my independent judgment to special interest or partisan political groups, or to use the schools for personal gain or for the gain of friends.
I will hold confidential all matters pertaining to the schools which, if disclosed, would needlessly injure individuals or schools. In all other matters, I will provide accurate information and, in concert with my fellow board members, interpret to the staff aspirations of the community for its school.
I will vote to appoint the best qualified personnel available after consideration of the recommendations of the Chief Administrative Officer. I will support and protect school personnel and proper performance of their duties.
I will refer all complaints to the Chief Administrative Officer and will act on the complaint at public meetings only after failure of an administrative solution.
Thank you. Now we are going to approve the annual meeting schedule of the Middlesex Board of Education for the 2025 calendar year to be held the third Wednesday of each month unless otherwise specified at 6 p.m. in the Media Center of the Middlesex High School located at 300 John F. Kennedy Drive, Middlesex, New Jersey, 08846. Now we have 3.08 is approval of annual organizational items. Number 1 is our bylaws, policies, and regulations. Number 2 are official newspapers for advertisements. 3, official depositors and custodial of funds. So as listed. Approval of action items 3.06 through 3.08 as presented. So moved.
Second.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Ms. Giordano, can you please take the roll?
Ms. Jeffrey?
Yes.
Mr. Nicolay?
Yes.
Mrs. Parenti?
Yes.
Mrs. Perry?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinn?
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mrs. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Thank you. We will now open the public comment portion of the meeting. Comments at this time can be on any topic. Please come to the podium and put your name, address, email address, and subject of your comment into the record book. Before speaking, please give your name, address, and subject of your comment to Ms. Giordano, Business Administrator Board Secretary. Direct your comments and questions to the Board President. You may speak on 2 separate topics for up to 3 minutes each.
Good evening, everyone. First, I want to thank the people I ran against. Congratulations. It was a challenging but rewarding process, and I have a great deal of respect for anyone who's willing to step up and advocate for the community. That said, I need to address some serious concerns on how this election was handled. First, the district's decision to involve the board attorney to investigate my eligibility as a candidate was entirely inappropriate. The authority to determine a candidate's eligibility lies with the county of elections, not the local board of education. They have simply no jurisdiction. By stepping into a role reserved for the county, the district misused resources and overstepped its legal authority. Second, I want to address the censorship of an article written by one of my classmates. For those who aren't aware, this student wrote a story about my candidacy for the school as part of the student publication. This article did not endorse my candidacy. It simply covered my decision to run in my platform. Despite this, the district cited policy 5721, independent publications, to justify blocking its publication, claiming the content was prohibited under school policy. Let's examine that decision. Policy 5721 was last updated in 2003, over 20 years ago, and prior to my birth. It prohibits materials that promote, favor, or oppose any candidate for election for the board. However, even this article had a full-blown endorsement, which it did not. It would have been still fully legal under the New Jersey New Voices Law of 2021. The law explicitly prohibits schools from exercising prior restraint over school-sponsored media unless its content is liable, obscene, incites violence, or violates federal or state law. None of these conditions happen to this article. I consulted with a lawyer who specializes in student press law, and he made it clear that the district's actions would likely fall under legal scrutiny. The lawyer advised the New Voices Law is one of the strongest protections for the student journalist, which his group actually fought to bring into law. Ensuring they have the right to engage in free speech through school-sponsored media, as long as the contest does not follow under those exceptions I mentioned before. He mentioned that it would be an almost slam dunk case in court. The situation highlights a larger issue, the need to review outdated policies. Policies like 5721, written in 2003, don't reflect modern laws, technology, or the understanding of current student rights. Continuing to relying on outdated policies not only leads to missteps like this, but also creates an environment where students and staff may be silenced or unsupported. The district must take a proactive approach to review and update policies to ensure compliance with current laws and alignment with values in a modern school community. By censoring this article, the district ignored state law, disregarded student rights, and set a harmful precedent. Schools should teach students to speak up critically, engage in dialogue, and speak up, not silence them with outdated or misapplied policies. At the end of this day, I ran for this board because I believe in this district, its students, its teachers, and its potential. While I might not have won, I'm not stepping away, and I'll continue to advocate for transparency, fairness, and accountability in the district, because this community deserves no less. Finally, I want to congratulate and wish the best of luck for those who's been sworn in tonight. Thank you for stepping up and serving our district. I hope your term is both productive and rewarding. And I wish you success as you work to move our schools forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will now close the public comment portion of the meeting. Do we have any ongoing business? New business?
I just wanted to make note that I am actually attending tomorrow in Somerville, it's a public forum about the school funding formula. They're reviewing it and they're having some public input sessions, so I signed up to go tomorrow night.
Thank you.
So there is a formula.
There is a formula. It's the hardest formula you'd ever want to read.
It's supposed to be like that.
But there is a formula. Yeah.
Well, thank you for going.
Thank you.
I just want to congratulate the two of you on President and Vice President, and thank you for taking on the duties of those roles.
Thank you. I'm excited to have a productive year with all of you. Continue forward. Okay, anything else? Okay, then I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
If you could just give me the committee for
And
Not giving up my second.